Right, so this is going to cover lesson 2 of chapter 4, the present perfect and the past perfect. In this lesson, you'll learn about the difference between the simple past and the present perfect. You'll also learn about the present perfect progressive and the past progressive. Sorry, the past perfect. So let's go review what you already know and see how you do here. So in these ones, you want to choose the correct verbs. So number 1, I have been waited, or waiting in this line for almost an hour. It should be waiting. By the time I got to class, the test had already begun, beginning. It should be begun. I still haven't been find my car keys. It should be found. She has been taking piano lessons since she was a child. Should be taking. Marco and I had met before we moved here. Marco and I had meeting before we moved here, or Marco and I had met before we had moved here. It's going to be met and moved. So let's start off with the chart 4-5. We use the simple past for an activity that occurred at a specific time in the past. We use the present perfect for an activity that occurred at an unspecified time in the past. Look at the examples. They competed the game at 4. They had already completed the game. In the first one, they completed the game at 4. There's a specific time, at 4. In the second one, they have already completed the game. There's no specific time. I was in Nigeria when I was 5 years old. I have been to Nigeria many times. In the first one, there's a specific time, when I was 5 years old. In the second one, there's no specific time. The time is unspecified. The present perfect progressive talks about how long an activity has been in progress before now. With the present perfect progressive, the activity is still in progress now. Time expressions with since and for are frequently, but not always, used with this tense. Let's look at these examples. D has been working for 10 hours. So it tells us the duration. She started 10 hours ago and she's still working. To form the present perfect progressive, use have or has plus been plus the verb and ing. We can also use contractions with have and has. So D has been working since 6 o'clock, or she's been working for 10 hours. So notice that in this one, although it looks like she is, it actually is she has. Look at the question. How long has she been working? We'll notice here that when we're making a question, whether it's a yes/no question or a WH question, we use the word have or has in front of the subject. The subject is then followed by been and the ing form of the verb. So we use the present progressive for an activity that's happening right now only. We're not talking about the past, just what's happening right now. So Kenzo is playing the piano right now. In this case, we would not use the present perfect progressive. But we use the present perfect progressive, not the present progressive, to show how long or the duration of an action. Kenzo has been playing since noon. or Kenzo has been playing for an hour. He is still playing now, right? So the present perfect progressive, we're talking about an action that began in the past and is still in progress, but our focus is on the duration of how long it has been going. You learned in chapter 1 not to use the present progressive with non-action verbs. We also do not use the present perfect progressive with non-action verbs. So read these examples. Let's talk about a few important differences between the present perfect progressive and the present perfect. The present perfect progressive starts in the past and continues till now. It talks about how long. You need to use action verbs. So my cousin is hiking with his friends. They have been hiking for several days. This means that he's still hiking right now. Remember, do not use the present perfect progressive with non-action verbs. The guys have known each other for years. It's incorrect to say the guys have been knowing each other for years because know is a stated verb or non-action verb that is never used, almost never used in the progressive. For your purposes, you should never use it in the progressive. With some verbs, the present perfect and the present perfect progressive have the same meaning. This is some verbs, not all of them. So these verbs include live, work, study, play, and teach. So look at the examples. I have been studying medicine for 1 year, or I have studied medicine for 1 year. In both of these cases, the meaning is the same and both of them are correct. Moving on to the past perfect. The past perfect is used when the speaker is talking about two different events at two different times in the past. One event ended before the second event ended. The past perfect is used for the first of the two events. So look at the examples. When they arrived at the store, it had already closed. So when we look at this, when they arrived at the store uses the simple past. It had already closed uses the past perfect. The event that happened first is the one in the past perfect. In this case, it had already closed first, and then they arrived. So first, the store closed, and second, they arrived. The first event is in the past perfect, and the second event is in the simple past. When they arrived, it had already closed. When before or an after are used in a sentence, the time relationship is clear, so the past perfect is often not necessary. So look at the examples. Andrea had finished before Chris got home, or Andrea finished dinner before Chris got home. Both of these are correct. Chris got home after Andrea had finished dinner. Chris got home after Andrea finished dinner. Both of them have the same meaning and both of them are correct. So let's do a little bit here. So let's take a look at this sentence. I offered Sam some coffee, but he had already drunk 3 cups. Which one happened first? Remember, if we know the rule, this is actually a really simple question. What is in the past perfect is always going to be the action that happened first. So we need to look at the verbs in each one of these. The verb here, offered, is in the simple past. Sorry, let's not look here because it's simple past for both. But the verb here, offered, is in the simple past. But had already drunk, right, or had drunk, this is in the past perfect. So the event that happened first is he drank 3 cups of coffee. That's going to be the first event. Let's look at another example here. The players cheered when their teammates had scored a goal. Again, we can just pay attention to the verbs and it's very easy to answer the question which happened first. Cheered, simple past, had scored, past perfect. So the action, what? Hold on. Sorry, I wasn't reading the question right. Did the question ask which one happened second? The one that happened second was that the players cheered, but the one that happened first is that the teammate. Let's take a look at this one. I want to make sure that I'm reading the question right. I went to Jeff's office, but he had gone home. Which one happened first? He went home, right? Had gone is in the past perfect. By the time I woke up, I had missed my appointment. Okay, so this one is again asking which happened first. So again, just take a look at the verbs. Woke up, had missed, and missed my appointment is the one that happened first. I hadn't tried Thai food until I moved here. So again, let's just look at the verbs. Hadn't tried, moved. So the answer is going to be, I didn't try Thai food. Okay. Before she entered the contest, Jin had never won anything. We don't even need to pay attention to the word before in this one because the verbs are different forms. Entered, had never won. So the action that happened first, she had never won anything. So let's put this all together and let's make a decision as to whether we should use the simple present or the present progressive. So this is a review. So it has been raining ever since, or it was raining ever since. And since I woke up, or since I had woken up this morning. So it should be, it has been raining ever since I woke up. Okay, sorry, but the wording of the directions is incorrect because we're just choosing the correct tense. It's not always going to be the simple present or the present progressive. So let's ignore those directions. I am driving or have been driving this car for years. I bought or had bought it after I graduate or have graduated. So it should be, I have been driving this car for years. I bought it after I graduated. Remember, we could have said, I bought it after I had graduated, but when we use the word after, it's not necessary to use the past perfect. So Nina has been working or is working on her homework for 3 hours. It should be has been working because we're talking about duration of time for 3 hours. But she still hasn't finished, hasn't been finishing. So in this one, it's going to be hasn't finished. Because finished is not exactly a non-action verb, but really it's describing a state because either you're finished or you're not finished, right? So we can't say hasn't been finishing. So when we had arrived or arrived at the station, our train has already left or had already left. So it's when we arrived at the station, our train had already left. The teacher is late, So class hasn't begun, hasn't been beginning. Should be hasn't begun. So again, this is describing a state. Either something has started or begun, or it hasn't, right? We're not going to be use it in the progressive. So we had waited or have been waiting for the teacher for half an hour. Okay. This one is going to be have been waiting because we're still currently waiting. But she still hasn't arrived, hadn't arrived. Hasn't arrived because we're talking about the present, right? Still right now. Hadn't arrived would be talking about the past. So for more practice, go ahead and do the exercises in 4-5 to 4-8.